All right. Hello, anybody who is watching. I have just started the stream. Hopefully, the audio is working. Hopefully, everything's working. Now, these live streams usually start off a little slow as people start trickling in. So I figured, hold on one second, I'm echoing. All right, there we go. Shouldn't be any more echo. So these streams usually start off a little bit slow. I figured I would have a little bit to show and talk about before getting into the Q&A thing. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is what I've been up to recently. And I'm talking about this because the Elden Ring DLC just dropped yesterday, and I've been playing the heck out of it. I absolutely love the From Software Soulsborne games, and Elden Ring is just phenomenal. The DLC has been outstanding so far, but I'm trying my best not to binge it because then I'm going to run out of the game, and I don't think there's going to be another DLC for it. So I really want to take my time and enjoy it. So that's one of the things that's been occupying my time. Another thing, obviously, working on sword reviews. It's doing a review every 2 weeks takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. So I have to dedicate quite a bit of time for doing that. What I'm currently working on is a review of this sword right here. If I can get it in. This is a Honshu. They call it their historic forge swords. Obviously, a Viking era inspired sword, not particularly historically accurate. I posted a short of me cutting with this recently, and it cut, honestly, sneak peek of the review here, it cut better than I was expecting it to. It's not my type of sword, something I'm not particularly experienced with, but it still cut pretty decently. So that is my next review. That's going to be releasing in 1 week. And 3 weeks from now, I will be reviewing this sword. This is the Hanwei Rhinelander. Very well-received sword overall in the community. Kind of an older model at this point, but one I've always wanted to get my hands on. So this was one of the swords that was sent to me as a review sample from Swordis, and I'm reviewing this one in 3 weeks. And then the other one was the APOC tactical longsword, which I don't remember off the top of my head when I have that on the schedule, but it's probably a month to 2 months out. I would guess somewhere around there without looking at my schedule. The other thing that I've been up to, not really up to, but the exciting thing is what arrived in the mail today. This is my first Nihonto. So this is a very budget-oriented wakizashi that is pretty tight in the shirasaya. I haven't posted anything about that, the fact that I got this yet. It's Mume. It is early Edo period. And I've wanted a Nihonto for a while just so I can take a look at what they look like, compare them to the replicas that I have a lot more experience with. Now, this one was very much a budget purchase. Like I said, it was $250. And one of the primary reasons is because it does have, I believe the term is a hagiri, which is a crack in the edge. It's barely noticeable, but it is there, and that's probably one of the primary reasons it was so inexpensive. Since I'm not going to cut with an antique anyways, it doesn't really bother me that it has that crack. So that is kind of an update on me, what I've been working on. The other thing is that I have Combat Con coming up in 1 month. I have been trying to practice my technique for the open cutting competition. Frankly, I'm going to be overmatched in that competition. There's a lot of people in that open cutting that are far more accomplished cutters than I am. But since Combat Con does not have a beginner's tier, I entered the open cutting, and I rather expect to be out in the first round. But I figure it'll be a good experience. It'll be fun, and I'm helping support Combat Con, so it's all good anyways. I'm also going to be doing the cutting workshop from Philip Martin that he puts on at Combat Con every year. I'm hoping to take away some really good pointers from that. All right, so like I said, that's kind of the update of what I've been up to, what's going on with me recently. Looks like we got a couple people in the chat here. Sinister Swordsman, hi, how you doing? We've chatted quite a bit, especially in the YouTube comments. Yeah, the Honshu is it's kind of a throwback in many ways to sword models that are from a decade ago, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less. It's kind of a throwback design. I'll get more into that in the review. That looks really, yes, owning a Nihonto is really cool. That's now my third antique sword, and I do expect to buy some more here and there. I would like to sometime get a fully mounted Nihonto, just so because I really love the artistry that goes into all the koshrai that you'll see from them. So I do want to get one of those sometime. But this was an impulse purchase. I saw it at a price of $250. It was 65 shipping, I think, and I just had to buy it for that price. Any new swords I have my eye on. I always have my eye on new swords, but honestly, with Combat Con coming up in just a month, my hope is to have some funds ready so that I can buy something from either Albion or Valiant Armory or Sterling Armory. I do have something from Sterling Armory I expect to buy there, but that's kind of set aside as something else. Other than that, not off the top of my head. I'm always browsing the secondhand market, always curious to see what comes up. I do still want to get a Todd Cutler sword at some point. Don't know what model I'm looking at, but I definitely want to get one of his swords at some point. Hey, Matthew Cross, good to see you. If anybody in the chat is not familiar, Matthew Cross has his own YouTube channel. It's pretty small. He mostly just posts videos of him cutting, and he is an outstanding cutter. The first time he ever competed, he took gold in Arming Sword Tier B at SoCal Sword Fight and silver in Longsword Tier C. First time ever competing. Dude's a outstanding cutter. In addition, he does really nice leather work. He can do grip rewraps and scabbards, and he's an excellent sharpener. So I know he's got something of a backlog at this point, but if that's something you're interested in, you should definitely check it out. Check him out and his work out. Yes, the Principe is looking good back there. You can see there I have the Principe, and then over there is the Sterling Armory Gothic Longsword that I picked up at Combat Con a few years ago. And those are mounted using the Chad Makes magnetic wall mounts, and I need to do a video about them at some point because they are really cool. Can't blame you. Yeah, at 250 gig. It was just like, how can I not buy that? Even if it has that crack in it, it's just such a good deal. And of course, Matthew, always. So does anybody have any questions for me? I know this is kind of a Q&A stream. I talk to some of you all the time anyways, but if you had something you wanted to ask me on stream or just something you wanted to chat about, feel free to shoot out something at me. If not, I will find something else to talk about. One thing I just wanted to do is make sure I give this a little oil since I had it in front of me. I'm going to be babying that sword just like I do any of my antiques. All right, looks like there are no questions for me right now. So what can I talk about? I can show you something I know some people have been curious about. Give me 1 second to pull it up. So I have had some people ask me how I keep straight my swords and when to oil them and all that kind of thing. So this is my spreadsheet of all the different swords I own, and I have here when I last oiled them, and I have it conditional formatting set up on here so that it will highlight them in red when it's been 30 days since I oiled them. I don't always oil them every 30 days because that's a little excessive, honestly, but this way I keep track of when they were last oiled. And some of these are quite old because they actually have Renaissance wax on them, or because they're more of a tool. Like some of these higher up knives are tools. So that's my collection of carbon steel that needs to be oiled. And like I said, I know some people have been curious about that in the past. So there you go. Picked up the Vision Series Talaro, and it's surprisingly agile. Yes. So that sword is one, to go back to Octane Junkie's question of new swords I'm interested in. I wanted Talaro at some point. Valiant Armory has donated a few of them to recent events, cutting events, to help pay for cutting insurance as a silent auctions, or actually some of them weren't even silent. But I bid on all of them. So far, I've yet to win one, but I do want to get a Talaro at some point. That is a sword that, in my opinion, presents better in person than it does in photos. When Valiant Armory first released the photos for it, I kind of was iffy on it. I actually thought that Gus's model, which is the 18B.15, I thought it looked a little bit better than the Talaro, which surprises me because generally speaking, Valiant Armory's the Vision line, the aesthetics blow Gus's out of the water. No offense to Gus, I don't think they are. It's just Valiant Armory focuses on that a lot more. But when I saw the Talaro in person, yeah, it made me a believer in the design choices and how good looking it is. And yes, it feels great in the hand, and I want to get one at some point for sure. And Octane Junkie, I'm jealous of you because like I said, I want one. Nice collection. Thank you. Mr. Swordsman got a Tinker Greatsword of War because it looked badass in Matthew Cross's review. Oh, I didn't know you did a review of any swords, Matthew. That's really cool. That is a interesting sword. I wouldn't mind getting it at some point, especially so I could compare it to the Kingston Arms sword I reviewed pretty recently. I feel like they would have a great deal of similarity. Their very overall profile looks a lot the same. So I would love to get that. And speaking of that, Matthew, am I keeping the Kingston Arms 13A? Most likely, yes. My original plan when I bought that sword was, all right, let me get this sword. There's not a lot of reviews of it out there. Let me get it. It's not really the type of sword I tend to gravitate to. So I figured I'd buy it, review it, and then probably end up moving it on. Well, after Matthew sharpened it and put a new grip wrap on it, and after it just sailed through every target I put in front of it, and I got used to how it handles, because it's got a lot of blade presence, but it handles right still. Once I got used to that and started cutting with it, I pretty much fell in love with it. And my philosophy on sword ownership is keep what I love, sell everything else. The idea there is I can recoup most of the price, usually, of the sword, and then find somebody else who will love it and let me use those funds to find something else I love. Now, there are some exceptions to that philosophy in general, because it is useful to have swords that I may not love, but I can use in my reviews to compare to other swords So there are some that in my collection that I may not fully love, but I figure they are good comparisons. But that overall is my general philosophy on sword collecting. And in terms of the Kingston Arms 13A, I do love that sword. So I do not see myself selling it unless something really unexpected happens. I was actually considering taking it to Combat Con for my competition cutter, but I decided I'm going to go with the Sterling Armory 18C because it's the sword I have the most experience with. And the more comfort I have, the less nervous I'll be. And just overall, cutting with the sword I know best felt like the right call. You have all the Vision series models except for the Leon and the Ranger, which yeah, those are, that's a heck of a collection of one line of swords there. Do you have both the Tauber and the Strasbourg since they're the same blade? Or is it just one of those and you're considering that both? I would consider owning either the Tauber or the Strasbourg as the same sword in many ways. I might be having a review of the Ranger coming up early next year. It looks like I'm going to have that loaned to me by a sword friend. So that's a ways out, but I am really looking forward to that one. We talked on Facebook. Oh, well, so Tomahawk 12, funny you should ask that since I just mentioned that I assume this is the gentleman who is going to be loaning me the Ranger. So yes, it's okay to talk about that. You cut really well with the sword. Yes, that sword made up for my deficiencies, the Kingston Arms 13A. But thank you. Matthew, you should do some reviews. You are an excellent cutter, and I would love to hear your thoughts on your swords. And you have maybe not even necessarily reviews, but just initial thoughts, even if it's not your swords. What if some of the swords you get in for scabbards or grip rewraps, if your customers are willing, if you could put out a little video showcasing them or basic thoughts? I think you get a lot of really cool stuff passing through your hands, and it would be a cool thing to see. Yeah, I agree with you. I am jealous there. Yep. All right, I was right. Tomahawk 12 is the sword friend with the Ranger, and he is graciously allowing me to borrow it like I said, early next year, where I have it on the schedule. I think it's in February. I don't remember. I have a schedule. Actually, in that same spreadsheet, I have my schedule marked out for what swords I'm reviewing. But I wanted to, in advance, thank Tomahawk 12 here for allowing me to, in the future, borrow that sword, because the Ranger is, I've picked it up a few times. They had it at Valley of the Sun this year when that was the first time Sonny had handed it off to Gus for his approval, and he got that approval at Valley of the Sun. I didn't really get a chance to handle it there because Valley of the Sun is a very small event, and there was a lot of people at those booths. But I did get a chance to handle it a little bit more at SoCal Sword Fight this year, and I get the feeling I'm going to love that sword, which is unsurprising because the Vision line is just outstanding. Marrying Angus Trim's handling and performance with Valiant Armory's fit and finish and aesthetic is just such a great combination. I am always excited to see the new models that they come out with. And come to think of it, the Ranger is the most recent one, so that's going on 4 or 5 months now since they revealed that. I'm hoping to see a new model soon. Oh, nice. Yes, that's kind of one of those things. It's like, if you're going to get the Vision Ranger, you kind of got to go for that knife upgrade, right? Just to complete the set. So awesome. I'm glad to hear that. All right. Yeah, Octane, you have both the Tauber and the Strasbourg. And yeah, they will definitely have slight differences. I know Sonny was doing his best to make the hilt the exact same weight on both of them, but that's nearly impossible with the differences in the pommel, especially. I believe, I don't remember if Gus said this, but I know somebody I respected said that he felt like the Strasbourg came a little bit closer to the 18B.13, I think is the source model for that. And the Strasbourg may have came a little bit closer, but we're talking very minor differences. They are both just gorgeous swords, and I know the Tauber is one of my absolute favorite long swords ever. That there's just something so special about that sword. It feels so good in the hand. Good talking about Matthew Cross's video about the Hanwei Tinker Great Sword of War. I'm going to need to go look at that. I guess I must have missed that on your channel, Matthew. And since I'm talking so much about the Tauber, I might as well show it off a little bit here. Not going to take it out of the scabbard. I don't want to re-oil it right now. But every time I do these live streams, I end up having like 10 swords to re-oil, and it's like, I'll just go ahead and keep it in the scabbard this time. I love this sword. Everything about it is just perfect. I really don't think there's anything I would do to improve this sword, and that's rare praise for me. I can almost always find something to say, I think this could be improved. I think this would be better like this. I don't think I can come up with anything with the Tauber. So, yeah. Of course, I'm talking about that now, and I don't remember what I said in my review of it other than that I loved it. Maybe I did have something to say could have been improved in there. I don't remember at this point. That was a year and a half, 2 years ago. It's been a while. It's been a lot of reviews. I don't remember everything I say in every single one of them. Got the Tauber in purple and black. It showed up on AOC. Yeah, I actually got the my Tauber was from Age of Chivalry as well. That was one of the first ones that was available to buy. I bought it pretty much as soon as they announced the line. I saw that sword, and AOC posted they had it, and I jumped on it before even knowing how I was going to pay for it, honestly. I think I ended up selling something to help pay for that because it's not an inexpensive sword by any means. But yeah, it's just so good. Purple and black is a really cool combination. I bet you that's a really striking look for the sword. Oh, I gotta say, I love the default colors, that kind of slightly worn brown and that deep red. Just looks so good. I love it. Let's see, what else can I talk about? So I mentioned that I want to get one of the Todd Cutler swords. So why don't I take a look at them? I can get people's thoughts maybe on which one I should get, which one you guys would be most interested in me reviewing. If I can get rid of all this stuff that pops up. Okay. I'm not going to be looking at chat right this minute because I'm looking at the screen. So I'll check in on that in a second. All right. I'm betting they're going to have even more models released soon. So I do love the look of this Castillon 15A. I think this one's hollow ground, isn't it? Which is kind of unusual on a 15A. Not going to be a good cutter, really. Maybe it could. Doesn't look like it's incredibly narrow at the foible, but yeah, that's definitely not going to be a great cutter. But I love this crossguard. This is probably my favorite crossguard design of any sword ever. So that draws me to this sword. I don't think I've seen any reviews of this model yet either. It's still relatively new. This is one I am very curious about. There's nothing like this, nothing else like this on the market. And I think this would be a really interesting one to review. Yeah. Honestly, I think these are the two of his newest ones, and both of them look really interesting. The kind of this kind of fashion. I know Unsheathed Sword Reviews just got one of these sent to them. So if you're interested in that, check them out. They're going to do a great review on it. They've kind of become the expert reviewers of Todd Cutler swords, kind of like I've unintentionally become something of a expert reviewer of the Balor Arms swords. So if you aren't familiar with Unsheathed Sword Reviews, make sure you check them out. I do love the look of this Type 14. I love Type 14 swords. I love that broad blade with that little lenticular cross section. This is probably an outstanding cutter with it when properly sharpened. This is probably the one I am least interested in getting. And there's two reasons for that. One, I had the Royal Armories collection from Windlass version of the Wakefield hanger. And while I loved that, I did end up selling it. Kind of regret selling it, but I don't like the full D guard or on here. I don't think it looks right to my eye. And that's probably at the price point that these swords are at, not saying they're not worth it, but at that price point, I'm going to be a little bit picky about looks. The clip point falchion, it looks good. I don't know, there's something about it that doesn't quite speak to me. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's that I already have a couple utterly outstanding clip point falchions, a Sterling Armory one and an Angus trim. I don't think I really need a third one in my collection. And then the Grossmesser, I like the look of this one as well. It's, again, a very similar blade type. But if I'm going to get a single hand messer like this, I really want to get one in this price range. I want to get something from Lance Connect Emporium. So I would go for them over this one. So if I were going to be buying a Todd Cutler sword, and who knows, maybe I will soon if I am the most recent review I did, the Maciej Kopcic longsword. I am trying to sell that one. If you're interested, contact me either on Sword Buyer's Guide forum or Facebook, and we can talk about it. If that sells, maybe I will be able to buy one of these. Who knows? So those are kind of the Todd Cutler swords and which ones I'm interested in. I'm going to go back to the chat here. Let's see. John and Vic have everything except the Wakefield hanger. Is it everything? They have the Castellan? I didn't think I'd seen them pick up either the Castellan or the Dejen. I don't know how to pronounce that. But also remember, yeah, absolutely. I absolutely will get something from Lance Connect Emporium at some point. I don't know when, but it is on my radar, and I will buy something from them. Oh, wow. So you're going right into top end for that being your very first sword. Anything I recommend for sword care? So Renaissance wax for knives and antiques, you don't know much else. So Renaissance wax is good for long-term storage, but if you're going to be cutting with the sword, I don't know if you are, but if you are, it's not really the best substance because you're going to end up scratching it off and rubbing it off. And again, it's more of a long-term storage. It's also something of a pain in the butt to fully get off your swords. You have to use like mineral spirits or you can heat it off. It's just kind of a pain in the butt to really clean off. What I use, Singer machine oil. Very simple, $4 or $5 on Amazon. I can put a link in the chat after this where you can buy it from my affiliate link with Amazon. So I get somebody else has bought one off my affiliate link, and I think I get 15 cents per bottle if somebody buys it. So not very much, but hey, every little bit adds up, right? In terms of anything else recommended with sword care, lint-free cloth, just to wipe it down with. You don't want to overly oil it, just a light coating and wipe it down with the cloth. I do it pretty much anytime I handle a sword, I end up re-oiling it. And like I said, with my spreadsheet, I generally speaking keep to once a month. I like to keep it roughly at that schedule because while I live in the desert and it's very dry here, our primary cooling here is a swamp cooler, which cools the house by pumping humidity into the house. So there's a good amount of humidity inside the house a lot. So I do try to oil more often. If you have any other questions, though, about that, feel free to ask. The fact that the Ranger is your first sword is going to spoil you for almost everything else, just as a warning. I almost thought, sorry, Garrett, I don't know. I don't know which sword you're talking about. We've been jumping through a few of them. Yeah. So the looks more user friendly than the Albion Lancaster. I don't know if I would call the Lancaster a hilt hot garbage. It takes some getting used to, though, that's for sure. I do think the Castellan here, though, just again, there's like nothing else on the market unless you're going for an Albion Type 15. I don't know of anybody else that really sells what would be a pretty historically accurate Type 15. So this is really hitting a market that is lacking, which is really cool. About the batch of Royal Armory swords, pretty sure there's a basket hilt. Yeah, Matt Easton has the hints that he's shown in his different videos and on Facebook posts. He's chosen some really interesting swords and daggers for the second batch of the Royal Armories. I'm curious about them. I'm cautious because I don't really trust Windlass's quality control. I'm hopeful though. The Royal Armories Collection Wakefield hanger I got that one had no QC issues really, and was an excellent sword. It shows that Windlass is capable of making outstanding swords. I am very skeptical of their quality control, but I am very curious to see what all the new stuff in the second batch. I'm sorry, you guys are chatting too fast, and I'm not sure what this is in reference to. Yeah, cheap and easy. And FYI, I use that oil on recommendation from Chris Fields. I just one time kind of asked him what he recommended. He said that, and it's like, well, it's good enough for a maker who I really respect. It's good enough for me. Rem oil. Okay, yeah, it's really for oil. Any mineral oil is going to be perfect. You don't really want any additives to it. Some people will add some scents. Like you can actually take a big gallon jug of mineral oil and drop some cloves into it, and you'll get that kind of a scent very similar to choji oil if you want to do that. But really, any mineral oil is a good choice and widely available and not expensive also. Oh, I would not personally use that, but hey, if it works for you, it works for you. The Bergamo yes, the Bergamo, I've seen pictures of it. I haven't seen it in person, but I've seen some pictures of it. It looks outstanding. I'm hoping Valiant Armory will bring one to Combat Con so I can get a chance to pick it up. It does look incredible. I'm very curious to see their take on that 18C wide blade diamond cross section, just that supreme cutter style. I'm very curious about that. Okay, so Octane Junkie is saying Renaissance wax for the hilt components, and that's not a bad suggestion. I would say if, at least the way I use swords, I definitely bump against the hilt components quite easily, so you might end up rubbing it off. Although Renaissance wax doesn't rub off too easily, but just something to think about. But yes, Valiant Armory's hilt components do have more of a tendency to rust than some other makers. Not terribly, it's usually surface rust and not too bad. Usually is quite easy to clean up. When I oil my swords, I am meticulous about going over every inch of the blade and every nook and cranny on hilts and all the hilt components so that I don't get that. But sometimes it still happens. I haven't had that personally with any of my Valiant Armory swords, but I've seen a lot of people who do have that problem. So that's not definitely a pretty good suggestion from Octane Junkie. You are welcome to Mahogany. Yeah, Windlass is so frustrating because they are so capable of making really good swords. Like I said, the Royal Armories collections, the Wakefield hanger I have, and frankly, I can say the 15A that they did, the Black Prince the Black Prince's sibling, are outstanding swords. And I can talk about the Black Prince one because I have the Windlass Black Prince, which is the exact same sword. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, check out, I believe it was my last live stream where I talked with Kane, Shen, and Unsheathed Sword Reviews about that in depth. But yes, Windlass is perfectly capable of making outstanding swords, but they just don't seem to care too much about quality control because so often you see mistakes made or just laziness in the blades or in the hilts. And it's just frustrating. And it's also frustrating that they have so many models that are old, that are not designed well, frankly, and they still keep selling them because they sell. So it's just, Windlass is such a tricky company to really talk about without going into depth because there's just so much to talk about. AFT, baby oil, yeah. Again, pretty much any mineral oil, and I think baby oil is mineral oil with some scent added in, that kind of thing. Probably something else also, but yeah, honestly, you can use any oil. You can use car oil. You can use vegetable oil. You can use any oil, but you don't want to use vegetable oil if you can avoid it because it will spoil. But mineral oil is great because it's cheap, it's plentiful, it is food safe. It's just all around a great choice. Chris Fields is here. Hi, Chris. Looking forward to seeing you in a month. I hope your shop setup is going well. I hope you're able to get that set up before Florida heat gets too bad. I'm sure you're already dealing with the humidity, but Florida gets not as hot as where I am, but it gets quite hot and humid. I hope you're able to get that shop set up relatively soon for that. Yep, I agree with everything Matthew Cross said. Mineral oil is, I have a giant gallon jug of mineral oil that we actually use for our cutting boards and that kind of thing. And I originally was using that on my swords, but it was kind of clunky to have a gallon jug available. So that's why I switched to it's one of the reasons I switched to the Singer oil on Chris's recommendation, because it's just a little bottle. It's super portable, easy to deal with. Whereas a gallon jug of mineral oil, it's big and bulky. Okay, that's interesting. So first off, I'm envious that you've been to Valiant Armory shop. That's really cool. They're trying to get into stainless steel fittings. Chris, you should talk to Sonny about that since you use stainless steel a lot for your fittings. Maybe you can give him some tips on that. I really need to get on that Type 18 train. I want to see what we can do with bringing one to market. Well, Octane, the Bergamo is a Type 18C, if that's what you're referring to. And they are bringing one to market. I have no idea how long or how many they're planning on producing, if they're planning on having multiple of them. They kind of do their swords in batches, from what I understand. But yeah. Sewing machine oil, yet another. Yeah, it's going to be a type of mineral oil, basically, as far as I know. The Battle Cry line from Windlass. So I don't have any experience with the Windlass Battle Cry line. From what I know, and this is a degree of speculation, from what I know, that is mostly swords that they have contracted to make for Cold Steel or other brands, and then they take those designs, black them out and sell them as their own. Maybe they'll make a few changes here, but they basically copy the design of swords that they are contracted out to make and make their own. Personally, I find that a little distasteful, although I don't know if they had maybe they negotiated the right to do that. I don't know the business dealings there. But I wouldn't be opposed to trying one of them out, but it is really hard to convince me to spend money on winless, generally speaking, because the quality control is just so poor overall. Now, the good thing is that Museum Replicas Limited, the shop that they own in the US, has outstanding customer service. So if you get something that has bad quality control and has flaws, I've had some, and they have always taken it back with shipping paid by them and basically no questions asked. So I wouldn't be opposed to buying something from them, but most of the time their swords just don't appeal to me. Yeah, Valiant has a bunch of 18 different types of 18As. They really like the 18A and 18B style with the diamond cross section, generally narrow blades. That's a pretty common type. But I'm guessing Octane Junkie was referring to an 18C. Just my guess. Heat is pretty bad, ignoring it making blades. Yeah, I'm sure the heat is pretty bad right now. It's getting bad here. We're hitting 105 regularly here, and we're going to start getting to 110, 115 very regularly for the next 2 months. It's why I have to. Cutting is difficult for me during June, July, August, and into September, because it's just, I get up at 6 in the morning and it's already mid 80s, and I can cut then, but I'm not a particularly energetic person in the morning, so it's not easy to cut well when you're feeling a little bit lethargic from just waking up. And then the evenings, it usually doesn't get below 90 until after the sun goes down, which is not conducive to cutting. So I have to find small times to cut whenever I can, and it's not particularly easy. Yeah, heck, Combat Con's in a month, I believe. Actually, Sunny's not going to be at Combat Con. Zach is, but I think Sunny had something else going on. I'm not sure, but from what I heard, Sunny's not going. But yeah, seems like it would be a good idea to share information there. They do make swords in batches, 20 Rangers. They're making a batch of six Castellan falchions. Sunny has talked about how that sword is one of the hardest swords they have for him to make. And he's always a little reluctant to make it, but at the same time, he knows there's some people who really love it. Although from what he said, falchions do not sell well at all, which surprises me. And the Castellan falchion is one of their best looking swords, in my opinion. I would love to get a chance to play around with one. I'm hoping they're working on a batch of 6 of them. Maybe they'll bring one to Combat Con. That'd be cool. Yes, that sword, let's go ahead and show it again. That sword right there, that is the sword that Chris in chat made on his How It's Made series on the Sterling Armory channel, which, by the way, if you haven't checked out the Sterling Armory channel, you get really cool information from 3 different sword makers, primarily Chris, but also Josh and Colton, and just a lot of fun videos and just interesting stuff, and a different perspective than most YouTube channels about swords, because they are makers rather than consumers. Although they are also consumers, and they definitely buy swords and from other makers as well. But yes, that Gothic longsword is, I love that sword. I have at least 2 people who have told me if I ever sell it, they want first dibs on it. So don't count on that. Their new Battlecry Messer is the same as my Man-at-Arms Grossmesser with proper nail and scale. So sounds like they took the Man-at-Arms Grossmesser. That's also windless, right? That's not cold steel. I get them. I get them mixed up because Cold Steel does use a lot of for a lot of their budget Euro inspired swords. They do use windlass for some of that, so I kind of get them mixed up some. But it's good to see that it has a proper noggle or nail and scales. That's nice to see. Universal swords, yes. So yes, I've actually owned a couple Universal Sword sabers from a mystery box that I got from Cult of Athena, which I really wish Cult of Athena would bring back. I loved getting buy mystery boxes from them. But yeah, I had a couple Universal Swords sabers really early in my intense sword collecting phase. Before I've been vaguely collecting swords for a decade, but then I really got into it around when COVID hit. Imagine that. So that's when Cult of Athena offered a good number of mystery boxes. And one of them was a saber box. And there was a lot of Topeka junk in there, some really junky Topeka sabers, including one, the blade was just cracked all over the place. But there was also one or two Universal sabers or Universal swords. And I like their hilt work on those sabers. That was really nice, but the blades did not have the proper distal taper for a saber, which it's really important for the vast majority of swords, but sabers especially need that distal taper. They need to be thick generally speaking, they need to be pretty thick at the base and pretty thin out near the tip. And the Universal swords that I've seen don't have that. And that kind of dissuades me from wanting to buy them in the future because they don't really handle the way swords should, in my experience. And yeah, you were referring to the 18C referencing Valiant Armory. So yeah, the Bergamo, I'm really hoping they have one at Combat Con. Who knows, maybe I'll end up buying one. I don't know. I'm hoping to have some funds to buy something. Chris, I think you might have a different experience than Valiant Armory because Valiant Armory definitely makes more swords than you. I mean, you're making what, a couple dozen swords a year? I'm guessing somewhere around there. Whereas Valiant Armory is probably making 100, 200, maybe more. I don't know their numbers, but I'm guessing they have. So I would guess their version of sells well is probably different than yours, but at the same time, man, your falchions are outstanding. Thanks for the plug, of course. The Craftsman line from Valiant Armory. What swords interest me the most? Well, that's a great thing to talk about for a while. Let me pull up their website. That up? Yeah. All right. The Craftsman line. And I can also say which ones I have some experience with, which right off the bat, I do have a little bit of experience with a Regal that I had actually bought basically to resell. Somebody had sold one at a good price secondhand, and I got it. I was like, yep, this is really nice. I really like it. I'm selling it. And I sold it as a profit. I never really bought it to keep it, but this is kind of 18A-ish, 18B-ish. I have to look at it more to decide which, but I love their overall profile on there. Let's see. Going through here. I always like the look of this sword, except I'm not a huge fan of this style of grip wrap, and I know Sunny or Zach would definitely be willing to do just a more quote-unquote normal grip wrap, but I've always liked the look of this sword. This is the English knightly sword, and especially in these colors. I like this blue. I like the bronze. It looks like, is it actually bronze or is it a satin fit? It looks like bronze here. I don't know if it actually is, but I love that. Definitely looks like bronze unless they're bronzing it somehow. Oh, and this one has a more normal grip wrap. So yeah, they definitely do. Okay, I'm just, and it does have a more normal grip wrap. I'm just viewing it wrong there. So ignore all that I said about the grip wrap. Uh, Thing is, I'm not even sure this has all their models because they've been doing stuff, new stuff. Here's that Castellan Falchion. I love the lines. I love this pommel, like on the Doge. I don't know how to pronounce that still. I love the overall look of this Falchion is just so nice. I love this. I hope they bring one to Combat Con. Here's the Bergamo. Before they only had it as a sketch. Now they have it as the full, as one picture. Looks like the pommel is very similar to the one on the Exeter, which is a really cool choice. This honestly gives off Vision line to me more than Craftsman. It has something about it looks Vision line to me, but I'm definitely interested in this one. Here. So this is an interesting one. This is the Harwich, which I know a couple very accomplished cutters are getting this or have already got it and absolutely love it. They had one at SoCal Sword Fight, and it feels great in the hand, but this one, for whatever reason, the very specific layout of the risers didn't gel with my hand, which is not something you would ever know without picking it up and trying it. So if I wouldn't mind getting something like this from Valiant Armory, but I'd ask them probably to redesign the grip wrap. I don't recognize this one. This is new. I have not seen this sword before. This, oh, okay, so this is like from a book. Interesting. Is that a fishtail pommel? Yes, it is. That looks a lot like the Strasbourg pommel also. I am interested. This is a little bit less geometry than I would like to see, but yeah, this looks interesting. Grubadal. They had this arming sword at SoCal Sword Fight. Outstanding handling. I know Matthew Cross was really drooling over this. Again, it's got that same hilt as the Castellan Falchion. This is the Castellan arming sword. I love this triple fuller look. This sword was really nice. I would not mind getting my hands on one. So they've got a couple new ones. I need to be checking their website more often. So this is kind of like a hand and a half version with a fishtail and a bit shorter of a grip. I like that. Not sure I'd order that personally. That's a big one. Oh, that's their take on the Claymore. It looks like, yeah, definitely not for me. That's a bit too big for my taste. So there we go. That's the that's a quick look at the Craftsman line. But honestly, every sword I've picked up from Valiant Armory has something special about it. So, and I'm not just talking about ones I've owned. I'm talking about going to their booth and picking up different ones. All of their swords that I've seen and handled are excellent. It's just a matter of if they specifically appeal to you. Chris, if that's referring to the Gothic. Well, okay, well, we will make that now 3 people that are interested in buying that sword. You are welcome, Octane Junkie. It's so difficult for them as they have issues with the program on their CNC. Okay, that's interesting. Something I know absolutely nothing about. I am not a machinist. I am not a CNC operator. I know nothing about that. So I will absolutely defer to them. Harwich, Bergamo, well, Chris, we have similar taste, except, like I said, the Harwich had a very slight niggle for me on the grip, which would not be a big deal to have them do a slight redesign. We have very similar taste, apparently. Probably why I love buying your swords way too much. Do I have experience with the Navaja from Spain? Cold Steel's Espada is a nice take on it. I am. Is that cold? Are you talking about the Espada XL? You talking about this Espada XL, or are you talking about something else? Yeah, I think you are talking about this based on that picture. I am not really a knife guy. I have a few pocket knives. I have a few modern style knives, but it's just not something that appeals to me. I like swords. I like historical knives and daggers, nowhere near as much as I like swords, but I'm just not really a knife guy. I definitely do not have any experience with that, so I can't really comment about that. You like the Scottish sword, the sword of your people. Yeah, I mean, if you have Scottish heritage, do not blame you for wanting for admiring that type of sword. Personally, I have the French, German, and a whole bunch of. I'm a mutt of Europe, but I believe the largest number or largest percentage are French and German. But I've just never been big into genealogy or anything like that, or the where my family came from. So it's not something that I look at when I'm looking to buy a sword. I don't really look at that at all personally. Good chatting with you too, Sinister Swordsman. That's the model you own, the XL. So, like I said, I don't have experience with that. I will say my friend, the Levin Lance of Brother Nathaniel, absolutely loves the Espada XL. I think he has 2 or 3 of them at this point. I'm not sure, but he loves that knife. And he has a lot of knives. So that's a decent recommendation, I would say. The Brighton is surprising in how well it cuts. Almost what I would expect an extremely point-centric small sword would feel like. Lightsaber slipped up. That's a pretty glowing recommendation. Which one is the Brighton again? They've got too many models. That's not what I wanted. I get. Okay. Brighton. Okay, so that's kind of a, I would say, 16-ish, kind of a riding sword size. Yeah, that's an interesting looking sword. I like the fishtail pommel. I don't have enough fishtail pommels in my collection. I need to get more. Yeah, that looks pretty nice. I like the scabbard on this one. Yeah, that should be good cutter, I would think. What samurai style sword would I buy with a $500 budget and then up to $1,000 at a $500 budget? It's a tricky one because I don't have a ton of experience in the mid range there. Most of the katana experience I have is much more in the $200 to $300 range. I would probably go with. I can't say Huawei because Huawei is basically completely unreliable. What I've seen from people, a lot of what people whose opinion I respect, such as Matthew Jensen and Josh from Cottontail Customs, have said a lot of good things about, especially Matt with on the first one, which some people like Matthew Jensen had a lot of good things to say about Shadow Dancer, also known as Dragon Sword. That was their old name. I had a terrible experience with them, but again, I respect the hell out of Matthew Jensen, and he's had very good things to say about them. So that's definitely a brand that is at least worth your attention. From both Matthew Jensen and Josh from Cottontail Customs have both said a lot of good things about Fei Long, and I would love to get my hands on one of them, but that is around that price range, I think. I might be bumping over 500. I'm sorry, I don't really have in that $400 to $500 range. I don't have a great experience. In terms of $1,000 budget, and I can't really say Huawei, even though they are probably the best option. Off the top of my head, I would probably go for one of Zisei's budget. More, I say budget, one of their Zisei's lower priced options. They have a few that are still sub $1,000, from what I understand. And Zisei has an excellent reputation overall. That's probably who I would go with. Brighton is the one scattering shot. That's been a while, but yes, I remember that. Okay. What are the thoughts on the Valor Arms recent offerings? Well, Valor Arms hasn't really released anything new, have they? They've got their most recent ones were the Italian longsword, the Templar arming sword, the Alexandria, and the Kriegsmesser, if I'm remembering right. And I reviewed the Italian, I reviewed the Kriegsmesser, I reviewed the Alexandria, and I have not reviewed the Templar, but again, people whose opinion I very much respect, such as King Shen and Matthew Jensen, have had nothing but glowing reviews about the Templar arming sword. So from what I see of Valor Arms recently, they've been doing a really good job. I'm eager to see what else they bring to market. I'm hoping they will bring. I'm hoping they will continue to bring new designs, and hopefully soon too. It's been a while. Cold Steel Arkansas Toothpick brings an old question to mind. At what point, in your opinion, is a blade considered a large knife or short sword? This is an age-old question, and I think it depends on every person and every sword, every knife. There's a really good example is the Windlass D-Guard bow, which I did review a couple years ago. If you go looking for that review, please ignore the fact that it is a old review and quite rough. This is going to be a terrible. Yeah, I would call this a short sword personally. I think it's around 16, 18 inches blade length. It really does depend on the specific blade and the person. And I think you can't really define it until you get it in hand and feel it. I think there is a definite line where it feels more like a sword than a knife, but without getting it in hand, I don't know how you would ever really define that. Like the Todd Cutler, he's got a couple good examples here. Like this, again, I don't know how to pronounce, is that Degen? But the blade length is, okay, 24 inches, that's more into short sword. I definitely would not call that a knife. But they also have he has his Bruegel Messer, which I am not finding now. Oh, he has it as daggers. He's changed his website since I've last been here. Make it harder for me to navigate. Wow, he is really expanding his lineup of, here it is. So this one is 14-inch blade length. That's getting right into short sword length, or I keep getting the buy knives. There we go. Yeah, that's getting into short sword length, but it could be considered a knife. It could be considered a sword. I would have to get it in the hand and say. But I think that line is probably somewhere around 14 to 18 inches, and it really does depend, in my opinion, on how they feel. What would I call a riding sword? Extremely light. Mine came in at 1 pound, 14 ounces. Yeah. So, yeah, I would say a riding sword generally is going to be a bit shorter. This is my definition. I'm not going on saying on what it is historically or anything like that. My definition, a sword that's a bit on the shorter side for its style, maybe not. It doesn't have to be single-handed. It could be hand and a half. It could be both. Something that is versatile, that is all around, easy to wear and carry, and can be taken on while riding, but also kind of an everyday carry. So I have a Sterling Armory sword, the first one I got from Chris. That's kind of an 18A style mate. That is, I consider a riding sword. It's very easy to use one or two-handed. It's it's not even particularly light, if I remember right. It's around 2.5 pounds from what I remember. But it's It's very easy to wear. It's very comfortable. It's very uh, non-cumbersome. My concept of a riding sword is, like I said, something easy to carry around as your everyday carry sword, as if anybody in our society is going to everyday carry a sword. Yeah, the LK Chen versions. Yes, the Valor Arms by LK Chen. LK Chen has elevated that line a great deal. And I know they're working on more. I know the Kriegsmesser, they're doing a new design with James Elmsley offering to do the design for them. I've seen a little bit of I won't even say sneak peek, but a little bit of the design process there. And that's going to be a really interesting sword. And then LK Chen has also posted on a video, they had a picture, or they had in the background a couple swords that looked like they made that could potentially be either new models for LK Chen or potentially Valor Arms. I am very curious what they do. They are always bringing to market really cool stuff, and LK Chen has done a really good job overall. I'm sorry, Jordan. I have never been on a horse, so I couldn't tell you. It's 10 p.m. your time. Need to head up. Okay. Yeah. Chris, thank you for popping in. I really appreciate it. And yeah, get to work on some blades, and in particular, one in particular. And actually, guys, I am going to follow Chris's lead and go ahead and call this stream here. It's been a long week. Work blew up this week, and I'm pretty tired, and I need to decompress after a long week. So thank you for joining this live stream. Thank you for your questions. If you had any that you did not get a chance to answer, or you didn't get a chance to ask, I generally am going to be trying to do one live stream every month. Sometimes it'll be Q&A. Sometimes I'll have guests, like last month I had Kane Shen and Unsheathed Sword reviews. Maybe I'll try to alternate. I don't know. I've got a few people who have reached out asking if to maybe do a live stream at some point. So all up in the air, but you can also message me on Facebook, post a question on any of my posts or videos. I don't mind if it's slightly off topic. Again, thank you for joining me, and until next time, Alien 2 out.